NBA 2K27 is finally here on PC, and if you're planning on playing it on PC, there's one question you'll probably want answered. Does NBA 2K27 actually run well on PC? Because FPS is only part of the story. You can be getting 120 FPS and still have horrible stuttering, inconsistent frame times, or input delay that makes shooting, dribbling, and defense feel completely off. And in a game like NBA 2K, that's a huge problem. So today we're testing everything: average FPS, 1% lows, stuttering, frame pacing, controller input delay, graphics settings, offline, and overall smoothness. Then at the end, I'm going to give you my honest verdict on whether 2K27 is worth playing on PC right now. Let's get into it. Before we get into the test, if you're planning to play NBA 2K27 on PC, make sure you subscribe. I'm going to be testing the games across different resolutions, graphics settings, and performance targets, so you'll know exactly what setting you should be using on your system. And if you want more PC performance tests like this one, drop a like and let's get into the benchmark. First, a quick disclaimer: NBA 2K27 is entering early access before the full release, so the performance you're seeing here represents the game during the early access period. That means this isn't necessarily what performance will look like weeks or months from now. GPU drivers can change, the developers can release optimization patches, data compilation can improve, and some of the problems we're seeing today could potentially be fixed after launch. But if you're planning to play during early access, you still want to know what you're getting right now. For the test, I'm using CPU, which is a Ryzen 5900X. My GPU is a 3080 Ti, and I have 16 gigabytes of RAM. The resolution I'm playing at is 4K. My monitor is 240 Hz OLED monitor, and I'm using pretty much max settings. I'm also playing with the controller because controller response is incredibly important in NBA 2K. We're not just trying to find out how many frames this PC can produce, we're trying to figure out how the game actually feels. So let's start with basic gameplay. I'm not standing around in a menu looking at the FPS counter. I'm actually playing. I'm moving around the court, changing directions, sprinting, passing, shooting, and watching how the game responds. The first thing I'm looking at is frame consistency. Watch the camera movement, watch the players move across the court, pay attention to animations and transitions, because there's a massive difference between high FPS and consistent FPS. For example, a game running at a stable 90 FPS can sometimes feel smoother than a game consistently jumping between 80 and 120 FPS. That's because frame pacing matters. At my current settings, I'm getting between 80 to 90 FPS, as you guys can see. On paper, those numbers look good, but we need to put the game through more demanding situations before we can make a judgment. Stutter test. Now let's get into the biggest concerns for PC players. Stuttering. I'm testing normal gameplay first, then fast breaks, quick camera movement, transitions, crowd situations, and moments where there are a lot of players' animation and visual effects happening at the same time. We're getting pretty much no stutters. I feel occasional hitching here and there, but that's because of my recording, and I do not feel any stutters right now. The interesting thing is that you don't always need to see huge FPS drop to feel a stutter. Sometimes the average FPS stays high, but there's a sudden spike in frame time. That's enough to create that little hitch, and you immediately notice. For casual gameplay, an occasional hitch might not be a huge deal, but if you're playing Park, Rec, Pro-Am, or any competitive mode where timing matters, those inconsistencies can become much more noticeable. Personally, I'll take a stable 90 FPS over an unstable 120 FPS every single time. 1% lows and frame pacing. Now let's take a closer look at the 1% lows. This is one of the most useful numbers when testing PC performance. Your average FPS tells you how the game performs most of the time, but your 1% lows gives you a better idea of what's happening during the worst moments. Let's say you're averaging 120 FPS That sounds great, but if your 1% lows are dropping into the 40s or 50s, you're gonna feel those drops. On the other hand, if you're averaging 120 and your 1% lows are staying around 90 to 100, that's much more consistent experience. Based on the results, I rate the frame pacing pretty good. That's for my system at least. And this is why I wouldn't recommend choosing your graphic settings based only on the highest FPS number you can reach. Find a frame rate your PC can actually maintain. Input delay test. Now we get to something that could matter even more than FPS. Input delay. This is NBA 2K. You can have a 3000 gaming PC, a 240Hz monitor, and hundreds of FPS, but if your player doesn't respond when you press a button, you're going to note it. So I'm testing movement, dribbling, shooting, passing, defense movement, and quick directional changes. The question is simple. When I press a button, how quickly does the game respond? Does it feel immediate, or is there a noticeable delay? And remember, input latency isn't controlled by your GPU alone. There's an entire chain happening. Control, PC, game, rendering, display. Your controller matters, your frame rate matters, your monitor's refresh rate matters, your display response time matters. And when you're playing online, your network connection can add another layer of delay. So if NBA 2K feels delayed, don't automatically assume your PC isn't powerful enough. Offline versus online. This is essentially important in NBA 2K because offline and online gameplay can feel very different. If the game feels responsive during an offline game but suddenly feels delayed online, your FPS might not actually be the problem. Network conditions and server response can affect the experience, so I separate those two things. Offline, how responsive does the game actually feel? Online, does the responsiveness carry over? Offline to me feels very responsive because there's no cap on your frame rate. As you guys can see, this is offline gameplay I'm showing you guys. But with the online experience, I have not done online yet. I will, but I do know because I play NBA 2K pretty much every year. Online is usually capped at 60 FPS. So I have not tested the online yet, but I will in the future. First, graphics settings. Now let's talk about graphics settings. I'm not interested in turning everything to low just to get the biggest FPS number possible. I want the best balance between image quality and performance. So I'm testing pretty much everything at max settings right now. If lowering a setting gives me a huge performance improvement without making the game look much worse, that's something I recommend changing. But if lowering a setting only gives me 2 or 3 extra FPS while noticeably reducing visual quality, I'd rather leave it alone. The goal is simple. Choose a frame rate you can maintain consistently, then build your graphics settings around that target. For competitive players, I'll prioritize stable performance and responsiveness over maxed out graphics every time. Check your GPU drivers, close unnecessary background applications, make sure the game is installed on your SSD, check for shader compilation issues, review your Windows settings, and keep an eye out for game patches. Sometimes the problem isn't your hardware, it can simply be a game optimization. And if you want to help with future tests, drop your PC specs in the comments. CPU, GPU, RAM, resolution, and monitor refresh rate. Let me know how NBA 2K27 is running for you. Are you getting smooth gameplay, stutters, input delay, or is the game running perfectly? Your results can help other PC players figure out what kind of performance they should expect. So don't just look at the FPS counter, watch the 1% lows, frame pacing, stutters, and input response. Those are the things you're actually going to feel while playing. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more NBA 2K27 PC performance tests, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Alright guys, have a great day.